All right, so welcome back to Big Apple Banter. We're going to take a deep dive into the New York Jets offseason here, and most importantly, what they're going to do with the quarterback position. You got Watson out there. Are they going to keep Darnold? Are they going to trade Darnold, or are they going to potentially draft, Zach Wilson out of BYU with the number 2 pick? I mean,
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what they're gonna do. A lot of possibilities, but you know what? I was listening to DCR earlier in the week, so I want to pull that up real quick, and we'll share that, and then we'll want to commentate off of that.
okay.
Start it there.
Whatever state your team is going to be in coming into this season while your young player develops. But I just don't see Sam as being the long-term answer for the Jets at the quarterback spot. I mean, there's too many question marks from his first 3 years to make that definitive determination. If you're saying that he's going to be your guy long-term, I don't know what you're basing that on.
Just on hope, on potential, right? It's not on anything that he's done, and you think that you can be the one and the regime that can fix Sam Darnold. So
he's on his third quarterback. He's on his third head coach going into his fourth year. Dave,
I've said from the beginning, I'm moving on, and thank you very much, and I hope you have success elsewhere. But it's not gonna be here because I can't risk it. But here is Adam Schefter, Barton Hahn yesterday. A little update, a little different tune on one Sam Darnold.
I think that.
So, what do you think? What they got to say there?
Well, I disagree with the fact of just throwing them away like garbage, like you're done with them. I think mainly the thought process behind that is the fact that they're going to have to make a financial commitment going past this year on him. But the saying that, yeah, he hasn't shown anything. He's shown flashes, but you got to take into account his surroundings and his constant injuries. And if you truly think you brought in a new coaching staff and an offensive coordinator that can break him, make him that West Coast offense like, Jimmy Garoppolo, I mean, why not keep him?
Yeah, dude, I totally agree with you. I don't know why. I know we haven't seen a whole lot from Sam. I totally agree with them from that standpoint. But the fact that you want to just throw him away and just maybe move on to another quarterback in the draft, like I don't know. But you know what? There's more that I want to get into. They're gonna talk about Adam Schefter and Sam Darnold. So let's see what they have to say about that.
They are wide open on this. Wow. And the fact that they're wide open would tell me that they're inclined to move on from him, okay? They haven't made a decision. They're looking at all the scenarios. But if you knew that he was the guy, you wouldn't be looking at all the scenarios. You wouldn't be listening, right? So the fact that that's going on tells me that I would think that they're more likely than not to make a move. But I don't think they've made any final decisions at all.
And you remember when Schefter said at some point in the not-so-distant past that he doesn't just say stuff to say stuff. Like, he has insight into this situation. And if he thinks that they're going to probably trade him, you have to believe they're probably going to trade him.
Well, I think it makes the most sense, especially if you're talking about a first-round pick. I mean...
So then there's that from Adam Schefter, one of his latest reports. So let me get this straight. A month or so ago, right towards the end of the season, basically, not a month ago, a couple months ago, Sam Darnold's, what were they saying about a second or third round pick, was like his value. And now all of a sudden, now all of a sudden, and then the second report was like, second round pick, maybe as high as, a high second rounder or whatever. And now it's possibly a first rounder or probably, it's a late first round pick. But then that's only going to be, teams at the end of the draft who need, quarterbacks like Chicago or an Indy. But, are those teams like, so first he was barely worth the second or third, barely in the second. Now he's all of a sudden worth a first. If you're a GM of an early team, are you really going to give the Jets a first round pick for Sam Darnold?
You know what? You got to take into account that, college football scouts have said that, next year's draft is not really a true quarterbacks coming out that are professional ready quarterbacks. So they might be in a couple of year drought trying to find a quarterback. So teams like New Orleans who have their quarterback retiring, teams like Washington, who Alex Smith's, future is up in the air with his injury and his age. And then also the Colts who just had Phillip Rivers retire. I mean, those last two teams, actually, I saw a report earlier today that they called the Jets about Sam Darnold. So you got to take all that into account. And yeah, if you're one of those teams and it's a late round pick, I mean, Sam Darnold was drafted 3 years ago,
I know.
third overall. So,
I don't see. I honestly, first we were talking about teams maybe highly doubting if they would give up a second or a third, and now you're talking about teams giving up a first. It just, I know with the moves lately, you know, you might think that, but the only reason why the Rams gave up 2 firsts because they also gave up that horrible, you know, the Lions took on that horrible contract of Goff,
right.
and now the Eagles are trying to do the same thing with Wentz. But you know, if you have to think about it, if your teams and you're going to trade 2 first rounders for, you know, like a guy like Stafford, you know, don't worry, he's good, but then why not tack on like another 2 first rounders and then you could get Deshaun Watson, you know, if you're other teams, right? And now if you're the Jets, you know, you're in the driver's seat for a guy like Deshaun Watson, which if they're going to move on for Sam, Deshaun Watson better be the guy because if he isn't, if they're going to draft a quarterback at 2, it's the Sam Darnold situation all over again. And we'll get into. Well, hold on that because there's another thing I want to show with on DCR that they had a comment about that. So let me pull that up.
Jeez.
1340. All right.
Do that, Rick, but I would also say that it's probably the easier move to justify with moving off of Sam. I think the one that would be harder for Joe Douglas is committing to him and deciding this is going to be our guy and using a second overall pick on another player or deciding to trade that for a package of picks and not being in on Deshaun Watson or any of these other quarterbacks that are going to get traded this offseason. I think staying with Sam by far is the more difficult move for Joe Douglas.
If he's not the answer and you stick with him, this could be your probably would be your defining moment if you're Joe Douglas. And I don't know, it could be the beginning of the end. If you stick with Darnold, he's not the answer.
Yeah, you damn sure. You got to be right. If you stick with Sam, you got to be right. You have to be.
But here's the thing, though. And again, who?
All right, so you see what like Dave Rothenberg recruits. I really disagree with them there. I really, honestly. They're saying that it's detrimental to basically Joe Douglas's career. I mean, either way you go, it's the biggest decision of his career. Whether if he takes Zach Wilson at 2, it's basically like, what is it? McCagnon took Darnold, right?
Yes.
So it's basically like McCagnon taking Darnold. So you first of all, you trade up to the 3rd overall pick and you take Sam Darnold, and now you're going to give up after him on 3 years when you could just, you know, you have a whole new coaching staff, which everybody's been saying, and DiPietro would go on to say, and later on in that podcast, how, and I agree with him, how you don't want Sam Darnold to go to another team and then he succeeds. You know, see, you roll the dice with him, and they you know, that's what they're saying. You know, they don't want to. They say it's very, very risky to roll the dice. You know, with Sam Darnold going on year 4 with a third quarterback, third head coach. But in my opinion, how can you risk the 2nd overall pick on another quarterback and it looks like it's going to be Zach Wilson? You know, don't get me wrong, he probably has a lot of talent, but he didn't play in a conference where the talent was where, you know, guys like Trevor, you know, and those guys are playing. So it just, I don't know, bro. It doesn't make sense to me what those guys are saying there.
Dude, in my opinion, they're so short-sighted. It's ridiculous. They're looking at this with blinders on. I mean, they think that that's a major decision or a major issue if they stick with Sam and he turns out not to be the guy a year later. No big deal. You still have that extra first-round pick that you got from Seattle going into next year.
Exactly.
You'll have other draft picks.
Exactly.
If you need to trade up.
And they're saying it's a big deal. Like if you stick with Sam and he turns out to be a dud, then you're in the same position than you are this year. All right, so what? So I'd rather be in that position than drafting Zach Wilson number 2 overall, and then he turns out then we're in the same situation where he turns out to be a dud, and
it turns out to be Johnny Manziel or something.
You know, so I totally disagree with their take on that. Totally.
No, you need to keep those. You need to use those high picks on other pieces that are rare to come by, whether that's edge rusher, offensive lineman, weapons.
The way I agree with you. The way I see it is roll the dice with Sam on year 4. Yes. I don't see what the problem is, because if he shows anything, then you pay him the $25 million, and then if he doesn't, then you cut him. There's no, then there's squash it. Then his deal's done. You're not offering him a guaranteed contract because he hasn't shown anything that, so he's not going to get guaranteed money. He'll get very little guaranteed money. He's not going to get a big lump sum of guaranteed money. But then you could get a versus a rookie quarterback who then they're going to play right off the bat probably because why would they not? And which is just going to ruin them. That we've seen it over and over again.
And then if that happens, you can guarantee next year they won't make the playoffs. The year after that, they won't make the playoffs because they're going to ride with the
Job is going to get criticized again if taking Zach Wilson and then him not panning out. When you're probably better off, yes, Sam. I'm not going to criticize him highly if you stick with Sam, see what he's got. But again, if you get a first-round pick, all right, fine, trade him because I think then if you could get a first-round pick for Sam, then you could use that to trade for Watson, and then if that's the scenario, then you do it because that's the only way if you're getting rid of Sam, the only way I'm getting rid of Sam is if we're landing Watson, hands down. That's it. The only scenario. That's the only scenario.
Especially if it's potentially, Washington, who has a 19th overall pick. If they're willing to give that up for Sam, I'll take that. And that's even more ammunition to go get Watson. I cannot tolerate them drafting Zach Wilson. I never heard of this guy until a month ago. I've never even seen him play one game. You never hear his name. It's just another one of those flavor of the month guys.
Steve Young, I think he's from BYU, and he supposedly he's been watching. He watched all of his season, his whole season. And he said he's got loads of arm talent. And again, Todd McShay has come out and said that, it's Trevor Lawrence, a little margin, and then Zach Wilson compared to Trevor Lawrence. This gap, Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, So a lot's changing. But again, there's always this talk with scouts and Todd McShay, and Mel Kiper. These guys talk out of their butthole sometimes, honestly, because, all these guys, they rate them and then, Geno Smith was supposed to be a number 1 overall pick, ended up being a 2nd-round pick, and then turned out being a dud. So what people see in these guys, again and again, I'll repeat it, Jake Locker, Blaine Gabbert, Christian Ponder, 8, 10, and 12, duds. And then you look at Josh Allen, Mahomes, Watson, 8, 10, and 12, all studs. It's just – and they all fell in the same slot. So it's just how do you rate these guys? How do they all how is Ponder rated, on the same scales like a Watson or a Mahomes when they're practically taking around the same game? It just doesn't make sense, which is why you don't take a guy at number 2 when you just went through this with Sam Darnold.
No, I agree 100%. I seriously because look, let's say hypothetically they take Wilson at 2nd. Yeah, I don't know that. Like I said, they're short-sighted. They're not thinking of the big picture. They're just looking at it because you know what? It's easy for them to say that because neither of them are even fans of the team. So they just follow, the what's on the surface. They don't look deep in that
because when it comes to that disagreement on DCR, Rick is always the one to come to Sam's defense. Which you and we're not coming to his defense, but we're willing to take another shot on him than risk taking a quarterback at 2, which I agree with Rick there. And I disagree. It's not risky, taking the chance on Sam because I want to see what he could do under Saleh, LaFleur, and this whole new staff. And if you could get him weapons with using number 2 or trading that number 2, then you have weapons for Sam. And then if Sam turns out to be nothing, then you got ammunition for the next guy for next year.
And look, you don't know what's going to happen next year too, right? You didn't think Deshaun Watson could be potentially available or even given Russell Wilson, in the last 48 hours could potentially be available. You don't know those things happen. So you don't know what's going to happen a year from now. So to just take a chance on a college quarterback at the 2nd overall pick where you need to freaking hit that pick. That isn't some, 28th overall pick where, we could take a flyer on someone.
Yeah, dude. And very rarely do these top picks, these top, quarterbacks end up really being a franchise difference maker. I mean, maybe they'll put up good stats, but do they really turn the franchise around and make them a winning, caliber team? And take them to the promised land? We rarely see that.
And you brought up Mel Kiper. Mel Kiper said outside of Trevor Lawrence, he would keep Sam Darnold out over all these other quarterbacks in the draft. So if you want to take his advice, it makes perfect sense. I mean, Todd McShay too, or Adam Schefter. First off, Adam Schefter doesn't know much about scouting. He's more into the rumor mill and what's going on around the league, but not, defining who's a great quarterback. But I mean, is Zach Wilson coming out of college? Is he projected better than Sam Darnold was coming out of college? I doubt it. I never even, like I said, never heard this guy. Sam Darnold, you heard about, like Trevor Lawrence, you've heard about for years.
Yeah, I mean, and this guy, he's probably pretty young too. I think he's only maybe a sophomore. He probably only had like a year or two at BYU. I don't think he's a senior or anything.
And another thing, he looks small.
I don't know, dude. You just can't. I don't want to be. If you take, if Joe Douglas like really takes, and if this is what they're talking about with that thing with Schefter, if they're really gonna move on from Sam Darnold, I guess if they don't trade, if they don't land Watson, they're taking Zach Wilson at 2. It's gonna happen. If they trade Darnold and don't land Watson, they're taking Zach Wilson at 2.
That's seriously, they're just throwing away another couple years. I mean, what's another couple years? What's another 2 years to someone that's 78 years old and hasn't, seen the Jets win in how many years?
And don't get me wrong,
seriously,
if Zach Wilson, I'm not setting. I don't want him to fail.
No, of course not. But
it's just how many times are we going to see this from the Jets, where they take a quarterback with a top pick and it turns out to be a dud.
I mean, why do you think these smart organizations like New Orleans and Indianapolis and Washington, Washington a little less so, but even Indianapolis, why do you think they have interest in Sam Darnold and all these other teams have interest in him? Because They know how bad the Jets messed him up. They know he's talented and he could play in this league. Yeah. Maybe the Jets should look at that like, oh, these guys who have been successful for how many years think he could still be a quality quarterback in this league. What are we thinking? Maybe we're doing something wrong.
There's no way you should gamble the number 2 pick on a guy who wasn't really proven at the college level, who was playing in a lesser conference and everything, and you want to put the number 2 pick on that guy. I mean, I'm not hating on the guy. It's just you can't take that risk. You can't take that gamble with the number 2 pick. You're better off sticking with Sam, seeing what he looks like under these new guys. But I mean, if these new guys don't see Sam as their quarterback, that's another thing. But as Rick was saying, I didn't say it in the podcast, I showed in the podcast, but best case scenario, would be that LaFleur and Saleh want to, stick with Sam. But if the Jets are in these rumors, as Schefter is saying, I guess it's more likely that they are trading Darnold. And if that's the case, like I said, if they don't land Watson, they're taking Wilson at 2. And
If this is strictly because of money and the financial situation, that's idiotic. You could franchise tag him for the next couple of years. Even after the 5th-year option, you could franchise tag him. That's not a long-term deal. Yeah, it's a lot of money on a year-to-year basis, but it's no commitment long-term. The Washington football team did it with
really going to
Kirk
give
Cousins.
Darnold, what would the franchise tag be, though? Wouldn't it be like 40-something million, though? You're not going to give that to Sam Darnold for a year, are you? I don't think they are. I don't think they would.
I'd rather do that than take a quarterback out of BYU second overall.
Well, I mean,
that decision wouldn't have to be made for 3 years.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was just gonna say. Lucky for them, that decision doesn't have to be made right now. But
you would think in the next 2 years, then you definitely have your answer. If you kept Sam Darnold, you definitely have your answer if he's the guy.
I mean, if you don't, you stick with Sam. What's his 5th-year option? Like 25, like 20.
Yeah, $25 million, which is average.
Yeah, it's not that bad. $25 million versus taking a gamble on the number 2 pick. When you could turn the number 2 pick into other picks if you trade it, and then you get way more assets for the team, which is the more ideal way to go. And I really hope Douglas goes that route because it just makes the most logical sense. Why the hell would you take Zach Wilson at number 2? What do they say?
I don't get it. That's what I'm saying. If you build that team, look at Kansas City. Perfect example. That's why Bart Scott has been getting some slander this week because of his comments about saying that Deshaun Watson's better than Mahomes. You know what? To an extent, he has a point because the foundation in Kansas City with Andy Reid and all those crazy weapons with freaking Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce and those running backs, there is a point to be made there. If Watson was there, is he not very successful? It's the foundation. If the Jets build that foundation by keeping those picks and drafting things around them, they can plug quarterbacks and at least be successful until you find the right one. They can be competitive and be a playoff team instead of just putting this all our eggs in one basket on the second overall pick on a guy that we've just heard about in the last couple of months, and you're hoping that that's the answer.
And then you're in the same situation. So after year 3, if you take Zach Wilson, then you're gonna have to pay him $25 million or more. Because the higher the pick, the more slot bonus money, the more bonus money they get when they sign a contract, I'm pretty sure.
On the rookie deal. Yeah.
Yeah. So, how many times do they want to go through that? I just think if Joe Douglas if they're that smart in the front office, I really hope they don't take Wilson.
It's Watson or Sam.
If the report is saying, I guess that's it. But you got to use those picks to trade for Watson. If you trade Sam Darnold and get a 2 or a 1, you got to trade that for Watson. You got to trade this year's 2, the 23rd this year. If you have to do it, you have to do it. Because again, it's like basically trading this year's, yours, this year's. And the Seattle picks were basically Jamal. So just look at it. It's like you're trading Jamal Adams for Watson, which is basically you should have just taken Deshaun Watson with a 6th overall pick that year when fucking Josh McCown was their goddamn quarterback. So you're telling, all right, let's just bring this up. So Josh McCown was the starting quarterback for the Jets, right? When they and there was Mahomes and Watson available in that draft when the stupid ass Bears traded up to take Trubisky, and the Jets at 6 took a safety, and they took a safety in the 2nd round also.
Marcus May.
So they took 2 safeties. So with that logic, that just makes no sense. And you could have took a quarterback. That's okay. You don't take a gamble on one of those 2 guys, but now you want to take a gamble on one of these guys. But at least Deshaun Watson had something to prove at the college level. He beat the national championship Alabama team. Mm-hmm. So at least he had a proven defense against a somewhat NFL caliber defense and coaching of Nick Saban. And then you want to go with a guy in Zach. Why not just take Deshaun Watson back then when you had Josh McCown? So you want to get rid of Sam Darnold, right, and take a risk on Zach Wilson and not trade for Deshaun Watson when you could have just drafted Watson when McCown was the quarterback. Jesus freaking Christ, man.
No, it's just going to infuriate me. Seriously, if they take Zach Wilson, I don't know if it'll just stop being a fan of the team, but it's going to be hard. I mean, I'm going to root for the guy to succeed. I have no hope.
I'm not going to want him to fail, but it's just how many times are they going to go through this crap? It gives me a headache just thinking it. Oh my god, dude! What the new league year starts on March 17th, and when's the draft?
Yeah.
That Thursday.
End of April.
Oh, it's April. Oh yeah, it's in April.
Yeah, they got plenty of time before the draft. But you would think they're gonna know definitely before the new league year, because whether it's training for Watson or sticking with Sam, or you're gonna draft someone in the April draft, it benefits you to know what that's gonna be, so you can sign free agents accordingly. Whether that's bringing in Allen Robinson,
lately they've shown interest in Juju and Will Fuller. Obviously, I'd rather have Smith-Schuster. Will Fuller, he's talented and everything, but he's just hurt way too much. He can't stay on the field. But if they could land Juju Smith-Schuster, it's funny. We always take these guys from Pittsburgh. We've taken Santonio Holmes, Lev Bell. Now we could possibly sign Juju. Just another.
They've taken guys from us too. I mean, James Farrier, Jericho Cotchery. But yeah, it'd be funny though. It'd be ironic if they signed Juju and Sam isn't the quarterback, even though they played together at USC. And whether they sign Will Fuller and not have Watson, who played together in Houston. I mean,
yeah. And now obviously we stated it that Watson wouldn't veto a trade to the Jets.
No.
And if they do trade Darnold and get a 1st round pick, you have to use that in a trade for Watson, don't you think? And it just makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, having 5 1st round picks in the next 2 years is nice, but when you have that type of draft capital and there's a top 5 quarterback in the league available potentially, it doesn't matter. You go after it.
Yeah, it's not really no-brainer. Your future, because Watson is your future, and then you just use your cap space on Juju, and then shore up that defense on with other picks or other signings. And there are going to be other guys out there.
And they'll have plenty of mid-round picks. So if this GM is so confident in his abilities, he'll find players.
And then, honestly, that's where, and I'll say this again. I said on one of our shows, GMs lose their jobs on first-round picks, and then they make their jobs. And sticking with he should take that risk on Sam because he didn't draft Sam. But if he takes Zach Wilson, that's going to be on him.
It's his guy.
So he better be damn right if they take Zach Wilson. Otherwise, he's going to be scrutinized. I'm not going to scrutinize him as much if they stick with Sam and then, run it back with Sam, and then they'll be in this position again next year. And then, I think Spencer Rattler, he's a quarterback prospect. I'm not, too heavy on all those guys.
In Georgia, right?
I'm not sure if it's
Georgia. He actually plays, or he used to play at one of the high schools here, actually, Spencer Rattler.
Oh, yeah?
I don't know if it's I forget what the high school name is yet, but he's from Arizona. I think Scottsdale. I've heard a little bit about him. I've seen some tape, but I'm not sold on him. And you know what? He was a true freshman this year anyway, so it's going to be a couple of years regardless before he's even available in the draft. Like I said, I'm sticking with Sam or I'm trading for Watson. That's what I would do, and that's the only thing I'll be happy with. I guess you'd have to trust the guys who are getting paid to do it. It's going to be Robert Saleh and Mike LaFleur will be included in that decision, which you got to hope to trust their expertise. But when it comes to the Jets on their past, you don't have a lot of faith in that.
No, dude. I mean, you just got to hope and pray that this new regime will make the right decision. But again, if they take Zach Wilson, that's going to be on them. And again, I'm not going to root for the guy to fail, but I just hope they make the right one, because if they take him, you have to think he's going to start right away, and that's usually like not a good sign. They did that with Sam. I don't think it was the right move. If you look about every situation where the quarterback has sat like the first year, more than likely the careers, turn out pretty solid. Rodgers sat, Mahomes sat the first year. It's probably a small number. And I know those are two different talents. I'm not going to compare those guys to, Sam or even like Wilson, whoever gets drafted next. But it just, if you take time to sit down, learn the whole offense, and, practice with the team, learn under the quarterback and have a mentor, I think that's a way better position for the quarterback to succeed than just throwing him into the fire. And hopefully, some guys live up to the moment, like Justin Herbert. He was put up a solid campaign, and that's just like the thing. You could have taken like Herbert last, like you could have moved up or not even, they could have just taken him last year. So
that guy I'm not too upset about missing out on. I know he had a great rookie season.
The guy's going to be a top 10 quarterback in the league.
Maybe. He played one season.
One season, the dude looked. I said on one of our shows, the dude looks way better, in his first year than Sam Darnold has ever looked.
Sure.
In his time. So,
sure, but does he have a better foundation around him in LA?
Yeah, and I guess that's what goes on to what Bart Scott kind of said. Location and foundation.
Location.
It does have a point. It does make sense. And we kind of want to reiterate that. You kind of look at what Mahomes looked like with the trash offensive line in the Super Bowl. If he has his tackles, there's no way that game is the way it is. And if you put Sam Darnold then maybe in that offensive line, or even the Bucs offensive line, because the Bucs have a top 5 offensive line. Brady's already well protected. What else could that guy ask for with all those weapons and everything? It was just a perfect made and match. And you put another quarterback in there, they could probably do the same thing. I mean, Winston did do the same thing. He put up hella numbers. He just turned the ball over 30 freaking times. But he put up 5,000 passing yards and 30 touchdowns. So the offense wasn't the problem. It was just him turning the ball over. So,
and look at that. He was the number 1 overall pick, right? Where is he now? Backing up New Orleans. Who was second overall pick in that draft?
Mariota, backing up in
Where's he?
Las Vegas.
Okay, so let's take another quarterback, second overall, and he'll be back up for the Panthers in 3 years.
You can't keep going through this crap. Winston and Mariota, It's just I don't know.
It just to say something funny. I mean, I was looking at my friend sent me the Caesars sports book number the most bet on for Super Bowl winner next year.
Yeah,
Guess who's in the top 10? The
top 10
Jets.
to win the Super Bowl.
The Jets, no, they're in the top 10 for the most placed bets on that team winning the Super Bowl. So a lot of people, I guess, are basing that on potentially landing Watson. I just think it's funny.
So it's because the odds are so high now. Or
They're
do they have-
125 to 1 to win the Super Bowl next year. So that's like one of those bets where, like, yeah, if they get Watson, maybe they could do something here. So let's throw down, $50 and it could be a big payout. But I just think that's interesting.
Yeah, it's funny. I wonder how quick that line turns once if they were to land them.
I think that's why people are getting in early to get those better odds.
Yeah, it makes sense there. But all in all, dude, just to settle this, it better be Watson or nothing. Sam Darnold, if they trade him, if they get that first round pick, and do you think it's going to be this first round pick in this year's draft? I'm not sure if.
Yes.
You think they would get a first round pick in this year's draft?
Yeah, I would think so because I feel like they're
So
going
to I mean, I'm looking at the slots right now. So it's not even a late first round pick. It's technically like a mid-late first round pick because if you mentioned Washington, they're 19, the Bears are 20, the Colts are 21, and then the Steelers are 24. So
the Steelers too, yeah.
The latest pick is Steelers at 24, and that's like a mid-late first round pick.
What about the Colts?
They're 21. That's like a mid-round pick.
Honestly, though, I think the Bears are gonna get Carson Wentz. That's just my 2 cents.
And they're gonna be stupid enough to make a move like that because
they're desperate.
That's the Bears. That's
desperation
just for you.
Makes you do things.
But you can see teams like Carolina, maybe move up in the draft for a quarterback or make a move for one of these guys. So maybe they trade for Sam. Who knows?
Yeah, I think those are the 3 teams I saw today. It was Panthers, Colts, and Washington were the 3 that called the Jets about Darnold. And the Panthers are apparently high on the list, favored to get Watson somehow too. So
yeah, they're actively looking to upgrade a quarterback, and rightfully so. They want to win right now with CMC, and they have to.
But they're kind of still rebuilding because they traded away. They had Kuechly retire last year, and they had a new coach with a long contract.
Yeah,
so I think
look what they did with Teddy Bridgewater. If they could land Watson, that's only going to take them. Only.
But I still think they're probably 2-3 years away. The Panthers, even with Watson.
Then you could say the same for the Jets. Almost.
Yes, but the Jets have way more draft picks.
Draft picks and cap.
Yeah, I know. Even if you trade some of those away to Watson, you still have plenty more. I mean, they're not going to give them all 5 first-round picks potentially.
Yeah,
and they got more cap.
I was even listening to one of these podcasts. I don't know if it was DCR, Michael K show, but a lot of tight ends, are taken in the first rounds. Also, the guy on the Lions, I think
Eric Ebron. Oh,
I forgot his name. It's like Hawkinson or something like that.
TJ Hawkinson, yeah.
Yeah. I think OJ Howard was another one. Evan Ingram.
16th overall at Tampa.
A lot of these tight ends are taken in the first round. They end up not having like these Hall of Fame careers. That guy, like Tony Gonzalez, Antonio Gates, and these guys were taken like the 3rd and 4th rounds. So it just goes to show where obviously location matters where they end up, but also nailing, talent, in the later rounds also.
Definitely. I mean, Rob Gronkowski, I think it was a 2nd overall pick or a 2nd round pick, I believe. Eric Ebron was another one that was drafted in the first round.
Kittle. I think Zach Ertz was a 2nd round pick. Yeah, these guys were 2nd round picks.
And Travis Kelce, I don't know, but I don't think he was in the first round. Yeah, that's usually when you would draft the tight end in the 2nd or 3rd round.
The Browns drafted David Njoku like in the first round one time. So it's just you look at those guys.
He's all right.
Yeah, no, they're all right, but they're no Antonio Gates, they're no Tony Gonzalez, they're no Jason Witten, they're none of those guys.
No, I hear what you're saying. I like it. That just shows that it's teams. teams gamble with these first round picks, and a lot of them are wrong. That's why most football teams consist of mid-round picks and undrafted free agents.
So I pulled up one of these latest mock drafts for the Jets. It's not by like McShay or anybody like that, but I should pull up one of those. But so this one draft has the Jets taking Wilson at 2, and then taking a running back at 23.
I saw Kuiper's draft. He had them taking Devonta Freeman or Smith. My bad, Devonta Freeman, former running back.
2? Yeah, he had them taking him at 2, which is
because
ridiculous.
he was one of the people that said Sam Darnold he would take over any other quarterback in the draft besides Lawrence. I think JD. Right. I mean, he said on Michael K show it's all about the contract. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, it's all about the contract. But
stupid,
dude, you can't. You got to put that aside. It's $25 million. Well, what's he making this year? Maybe like is he still like making just like thousands, or is he in the millions?
He's always been in the millions, but he's probably I don't know. It's probably 13 this year.
No, so you're basically just a $10 million raise for an extra year.
And you give yourself 2 years.
Exactly. If you want to give yourself 2 years, if there's a quarterback prospect that you don't like in this year's draft, and then instead of wasting, draft stock on draft capital on top quarterback, where, who knows, even a guy like Trevor Lawrence, who is the top rated quarterback, one of the most top rated quarterbacks in the last, 20 years or so, he's landing in Jacksonville. There's no guarantee that he's even going to be a prodigy or whatever, a phenom, if you call it. So
exactly.
In a few years, we could see Trevor Lawrence be available. You just never know.
Yeah, Andrew Luck's retired because he was ruined by his team. Even John Elway, when you compare him to Lawrence, he didn't win a Super Bowl till his late 30s.
And they have like 5 quarterbacks going in this year's first round draft: Lawrence, Wilson, Fields, Lance, and then Jones. So, and then you're telling me about like 4 of them are gonna probably get drafted in the top 10, which again we're gonna compare this to Baker Mayfield. We could compare this to Baker Mayfield, Darnold, Allen, and Rosen. So far out of that group, Allen's been the best, then Baker, then Sam, and then Rosen. And then Lamar. Sorry, Lamar.
But
my bad.
Let's see, he's forgotten about because a lot of people don't consider him a quarterback.
My bad. But yeah, obviously Lamar Jackson. My bad. I don't want to get criticized for that one.
No worries. I won't criticize you.
No, I know you might, but I know whoever watches this might. But my
right.
bad.
Well, leave it in the comments. Yeah, flat out. I'm gonna wrap it up right here. I'm gonna say, you already know it. Sam Darnold or freaking Watson. Anything else, I'll be severely disappointed. Exactly. I think it's gonna be a colossal mistake.
Exactly. Watson, Darnold. It's easy that. No questions. I agree with you, bro. Well, that's gonna cover it for tonight. Thanks for watching, y'all. Like, subscribe if you want to catch us at our Gmail, BigApple Banter 9495@gmail.com. Catch us on our Twitter or Facebook. Thanks everybody for watching. We appreciate your support. And if you want to catch us, just comment or anytime. Appreciate it. Peace out.